Okay, this is Betsy and Thomas for the American Intelligence Media, and this is take 2 because take 1 was so bad. Look, here's the deal. We've already shown everybody in our audience, we've shown you where this is going. This is going right into the Queen's lap, and it's going to take some time for the people in the swamp to figure it out, but you guys know it, and we're going to stay focused on making sure that this swamp and the swamp in London and the swamp in Rome are all cleaned up, at least before we really retire. And today what we want to do is we want to tell you about Victoria Nuland. This is a big, nasty swamp gator. Been lurking around in the dark, deep waters of the swamp for a long time. People aren't paying attention to her. But you know, Thomas, he's going to shine the light on Victoria Nuland. So go for it.
Well, Victoria Nuland, as you probably know, worked in the State Department, and she was in charge of Ukraine and basically points east. So Eastern Asia and Eastern European countries. So she was the person who was connected to the whole Ukrainian thing. So let's go back and let's remember some of the things that she said. Early on, when Robert Mueller basically brought Paul Manafort into question, and then the rumors went out, the leaks went out, that he had stolen from the World Bank $27 million or something like that, and that they had the ledger to show it. Well, that ledger came from Alexandria Chalupa, who was on the Democratic National Committee. And when in 2015, which Devin Nunes has now confirmed just yesterday, as we had told you all along, that the entire thing started in 2015, actually earlier than even he admits. We know it for sure, full active swing in December 2015. So, what was it they did? Alexandria Chalupa said, don't worry. We know that Trump is going to use Roger Stone. And if he uses Roger Stone, he may use Paul Manafort, these are kingmakers. These are the guys who put 3 presidents into the White House. And they said, okay, then we'll just go after Paul Manafort right now. And so Alexandria Chalupa went back and created false ledgers trying to demonstrate that he had stolen over $20 million from the World Bank that was supposed to go to Ukraine. These were all lies. But you got to see what was going on there. Now, we've told you about Ukraine and why it's such a sensitive place. Because Joe Biden's son, Hunter Biden, is there making billion-dollar deals, and so is John Kerry's son. And basically, we should be reminded that Joe Biden literally was given their highest award from a group called the Party of Regions. And that's the same group that supported Nazism. So basically, these are the neo-Nazis who give us the symbol and the phrases that Antifa actually uses in their domestic terrorism here at home in America. So Ukraine is like any of the USSR satellites. They were taken down, and then you have our bankers and brokers rushed in to do deals so that the oligarchs got private control of what previously had been state-controlled businesses, whether it be aluminum or oil or natural gas, anything. It doesn't matter. These are the oligarchs. Well, the oligarchs, if we see the oligarchs in Russia, we see them in all the different satellite countries, Kazakhstan, Uzbekistan, Turkmenistan, Azerbaijan, all of those. And what we saw after the USSR collapsed was the rogue CIA rushed into those countries and they tried to take them over. And basically, you have certain brokers in New York who literally, in some of these countries, handled every single one of these privatization deals. And this is what was happening in Ukraine. But because Ukraine was so huge and the oil pipelines had to come out of Kazakhstan through Russia, maybe even through Turkmenistan for the liquid gas, into Ukraine and then Ukraine into Europe, well, Ukrainians were stealing 40% of the oil and saying, no, it didn't come across. And what was it? Over 65% of Ukrainian gross domestic product was based upon the income they got from those pipelines. So they started messing with Putin. And then, of course, there were 2 regime changes. Those regime changes, according to Victoria Nuland, were paid for by the American people. $4.7 billion, she said one time, and $5 billion, she said at another time. And this has also been confirmed by other people. Of course, Victoria Nuland in the State Department also had the capacity through first Hillary Clinton and then John Kerry, of giving out USAID, which is aid to foreign countries, and we gave tons to Ukraine. And we were basically telling them, cut Putin off. Let us get control of the oil. Let our Hunter Biden get his piece of the pie. Let Christopher Hines, Kerry's son, let him get a piece of the pie. And then they went to China, did the same thing. So in Ukraine, Victoria Nuland conducted 2 regime overthrows of Viktor Yanukovych. Victor was elected in 2004, first time, and he was, duly elected, and everything was great. And then he started considering, instead of going with the European Union's offers, which were, because the reason he didn't want to go with that is because Angela Merkel's a liar, and you can't do anything that she does honestly with her as a business deal. No way, not going to happen. And so he started literally talking to Putin about doing some kind of deal with Putin so that they would stop the corruption and Ukraine could still benefit by not only the pipelines they have, but further pipelines going on. But because of the confusion in Ukraine, Putin went out and he built Nord Stream 1 and 2. Nord Stream 1 is the very pipeline that Trump busted the entire European Union on when he went over there for his NATO conferences. And he said, don't you know Angela Merkel has Nord Stream 1 coming into Germany, and that's where she gets all of her oil, and she's lying to all of you? To this very day, the European Union has yet to acknowledge that reality, though it is a reality, and she's getting set up to do a deal for Nord Stream 2. But this is the same person who, has defied sanctions in Iran and everywhere else. So, going back to Ukraine, Viktor Yanukovych got overthrown in what was called the Orange Revolution. Now, it wasn't a revolution. It was a CIA operation and a State Department operation, and basically a weaponized Obama administration went into Ukraine and overthrew a duly elected president with the help of George Soros and all of his many different non-governmental organizations, his different groups that all have beautiful sounds in the title, and then they do the opposite. It's like the National Endowment for Democracy. They were there. Our tax dollars were active in 2 overthrows of Viktor Yanukovych. After the first Orange Revolution, and they overthrew him, Paul Manafort went in and got him into the position of being third in charge, second in charge of Ukraine, and then back as the president. And then, what did they do? Victoria Nuland and the whole group, Soros, the CIA, the FBI, Obama, the whole group, spent billions of dollars overthrowing him again a second time after he was duly elected. So, what did we do? We then conducted the what was called the Maidan regime overthrow, where people were actually shot from the top of the buildings. They actually killed people. And basically they were showing, this time, we're not going to wait. We want him out immediately. So he was kicked out and he left the country. So they put in a person who's basically the puppet of America, who is basically a neo-Nazi, who isn't telling us anything that's true because he's working with the oligarchs and he's trying to establish his own control of those oligarchs. Basically, it's a mafia of oligarchs in all of these satellite countries of the USSR. So Victoria Nuland is also the person, and this is just beautiful. She knew all about the dossier. The dossier actually came through her. So when Bruce Ohr was being a back channel from the Department of Justice to the FBI, what isn't very often mentioned is that he gave copies to people in the State Department. And those people, the first 2 people to receive a copy of the Steele dossier, the fake dossier, which was oppositional research by the Democrats against Trump, they paid $12 million for it. Who got a copy of it? Zainab Ahmad.
Yes, and that is a name that we've heard before, of course, because she was sitting on Robert Mueller's special counsel. So this is now what you're showing is a tight relationship between all this corruption and the Mueller string that's working over here on the special counsel.
Yes, so Zainab Ahmad and Andrew Weissman both got the original copies as they were passed up through back channels. And now of course, we know they were on the Robert Mueller witch hunt. So how is it the people who knew that it was fake from the beginning, who were part of the conspiracy, part of the collusion, part of the obstruction of justice, part of the horrifying coup d'etat that was going on, and sorry, it's a coup d'etat, and it's meddling in the election, attempting to basically stop a president-elect from becoming a president, and then a coup d'etat.
Wait a minute. If you really look at it, it's treason for people over here on this side and espionage for those people over in Britain. That's what it is.
Yeah.
And I'm so sick and tired of hearing Congress people talking about, we're going to nail him for perjury and we're going to get him for jaywalking. Hey, let's up these charges. It's treason. It's sedition. It's espionage.
It absolutely is.
And where is Victoria Nuland today? Was strolling the streets of D.C., shopping, getting her lattes? Where is this woman?
Well, she's not in jail where she belongs because she was conducting a treasonous action against America with people who were war actors from Britain, Ukraine, Estonia, Russia, and other countries.
Well, certainly Robert Mueller would have found this if he was doing an honest investigation. Now, will William Barr be able to finger this woman?
Yes, because he's already said that he sees the spying. And then, of course, they had trouble with the word spying. And Comey came out and said, there's no such thing as spying. That's called electronic surveillance. Yeah, but it's also illegal electronic surveillance, Mr. Comey. And it is spying. You can't mince words. You had foreign agents who were, in fact, attempting to literally assassinate, and this is no joke, assassinate the president. So let's get serious about this. If he had been assassinated, then maybe they'd take it seriously, but then they'd have a commission like the Warren Commission or the 911 Commission. They'd find nothing happened.
I know this is very important. How closely is Victoria Nuland tied to this actual plot of assassination?
She leads the regime changes. She worked with Soros. She worked with all of the people. $5 billion was spent out of her money. The State Department, and that's just the tip of the iceberg. That's what she spent. And then she says, I'm not going to spend $4.7 million in Ukraine and have Paul Manafort undo it.
Now, so from your research, in your opinion, is Victoria Nuland an enemy of Americans?
The worst. She was Hillary Clinton's right hand, and she carried on Hillary Clinton's seventh floor nonsense, and of course was the SES person who controlled John Kerry. But of course, John Kerry went ahead and did his dirty deals with Iran, gave him $150 billion, got paid under the table, and then has the nerve to come out and attack the sanctions that Trump has put upon Iran. After giving them $150 billion, which they spent all on armaments, to the Iranian Revolutionary Guard, which has now been declared, of course, a terrorist organization. So let's go back. Victoria Nuland has been part of many George Soros color revolutions. Every color revolution that happened when she was in the State Department, she would have had to have been aware of. You would have to be stupid not to be aware of these things if you were in the State Department and you watched one regime overthrow after the next, and then the economic predators coming in during the chaotic confusion, George Soros, and manipulating the currency and taking down every single asset that they have and fleecing the country after he destabilizes them by using social media in most cases to create a color revolution. Now, there's a color revolution that was going on here, and yes, Victoria Nuland was one of the field marshals of that, and they called it the Purple Revolution, and they haven't won, but they're still continuing it. Nadler and Schiff and Pelosi and Cummings, they're continuing this color revolution as if we don't know that George Soros did this 14 times and that Victoria Nuland admitted she did it in Ukraine twice, and it's happening right here in front of our eyes. So if we want to get Victoria Nuland, very, very simple. She is, of course, friend of Hillary Clinton, so she's thick as a brick in the Clinton Foundation emolument violations. She was there supporting all of that. She supported Hillary when she was given donations from so many countries we can't count. And that was while she was Secretary of State. And then she was part of giving aid to those countries in return. So they'd give Hillary a small amount. Hillary would give them a big amount to the country. Victoria was right there doing every single one of those deals with her. And then Jonathan Weiner was also there. And Jonathan Weiner was very connected to the Clinton Foundation, but he was also connected to a company that did a lot of, what's it called? APCO, I think it's called. But it is a company that was basically a publicity company. It's kind of one of these companies that covers your rear, like an opposition research company like Fusion GPS or Stone, Black, Manafort, and Kelly, or the Podesta brothers. So she was using this company that Jonathan Weiner was connected to, that he literally comes out and tells in 3 different interviews on television, which I watched, his alibi. He didn't write a book yet, but he came out and gave his alibi. And I mean, he was on for an hour talking his alibi. And in this alibi, he fingers Nuland, he fingers Clinton, he fingers the Clinton Foundation. He says that he knows the Clinton Foundation has taken in $20 billion, not $2 billion, $20 billion, and he can prove it. He also named the person that delivered this money to Hillary from the Russian company 10X and 10M, the one that was in America, 10M, delivered this money through an agent that was being controlled by Andrew McCabe and, yes, Robert Mueller when he was the head of the FBI. And so Jonathan Weiner comes out and says, no, here's what was going on, and this is all corroborated by others who were involved in this case. And he says that he literally said that he saw the briefcases of money being delivered to Hillary Clinton for the emolument payoffs for Uranium One. So Jonathan Weiner says Uranium One is all true, that yes, Hillary threw the CFIUS vote, and yes, Obama was aware of it, and yes, they knew they were working with Putin, and yes, for 10 years there were Russian spies in this country. That's all Victoria Nuland. Now, let's remember the other thing we want to put her in jail for, and the treason. She arranged for Natalia Veselnitskaya and Amat, whatever his name is, and the other 3 Russian spies. I could name them. They have complicated names. You've heard me name them before.
And when you're going down that list, would she have worked with this British Rob Goldstone too?
Absolutely. Rob Goldstone set up, as a Five Eyes member, this sting, which was supposed to be the Trump campaign getting dirt from Russians. Well, the Russians were forbidden in this country. They had to have a special permission, special visa to come in just for a few days. Who do you think provided that? Victoria Nuland. And how do we know this? Because it's all over the place. Natalia Veselnitskaya talked to the news while she was here. But she was here for for 2 things, the Magnitsky Act and a Prevezon deal. The Prevezon deal and the Magnitsky Act were being coordinated by Fusion GPS. So she met with Glenn Simpson the day before and the day after the Trump Towers frame-up. And it was Victoria Nuland who allowed them to come into this country. Now, they allowed her to come into the country, and I watched her during the Magnitsky hearings. She didn't say anything. She was sitting there. That's it. Why did we allow her to come in? Because she was part of the frame-up, and she was part of working with Fusion GPS. Now, remember, 4 days before that, basically the British Attorney General, Alison Saunders, came over and had dinner with the Orrs, the back channels for this information that went to Victoria Nuland. And Robert Hannigan had come over earlier to set up the hardwire tapping not only of the phones, but of all the computers in Trump Towers. And that's how they got the emails back and forth between Rob Goldstone, who out of the blue just messages Don Jr. and says, hey, I got dirt on Hillary.
Well, that's a name we don't hear a lot, and another one to pay attention to. He's one of the British swamp gators, and he works for the Queen, the Privy Council, I don't know, but, he's over there, and he comes over here, to manage this Trump Tower meeting, to make sure the conversation is going in such a way that it might snag the Trumps in this the sting that they've got going?
Correct. Rob Goldstein is the only person who ever mentioned anything about Hillary Clinton, and it was all a lie. Natalia Veselnitskaya only mentioned the Magnitsky Act, and the Magnitsky Act has a component of it where we don't allow Americans and Russians don't allow an exchange of adoptions. And so she supposedly is trying, and she's supporting Bill Browder, one of the biggest criminals on the face of the earth. So really, she was nothing more than a Russian spy. She didn't want to talk about Hillary dirt because she had none. Goldstone didn't have any. That wasn't the intent. Manafort and Jared, after literally a few minutes in this meeting, said, "This is nonsense. This is crazy. We know this garbage. And obviously, this isn't what it was supposed to be." And they left. They didn't even stay for the rest of the meeting. And somehow that was supposed to be the treasonous act that was supposed to, have a coup d'etat of our president, because they had a meeting with Russians who were allowed into this country, set up by a Brit as a sting on the campaign, and yet nothing happened, and so there couldn't be a sting. Now it's just implication. And then, of course, it was supposed to be the Trump Towers computer and getting money from the Russians, from the Alpha Bank, and that's all nonsense. It's all found out to be nonsense. So the point is, Victoria Nuland could not be any more guilty as a treasonous, seditious enemy of America. She was completely complicit in every bit of this. And they don't mention the State Department enough when they say the politicalization of the FBI and the DOJ. They need to add the NSA, the CIA, and especially the Department of State.